You know, my first piece of advice to you, Michael Bay, just in this video alone, just a singular ambulance in the title is a little bit misleading, because with this body count you provided, you're gonna need multiple. Ambulance was directed by Michael Bay, who has had a very interesting track record in Hollywood, putting out some big budget films. He really does enjoy having a lot of money for his projects. He's made some great films like The Rock, which is super fun, The Island, which I think is his best movie for sure, and he's also made all the Transformers movies starting from the mid-2000s, which for the most part have been pretty big hunks of shit, aside from the first one. But this of course stars a great trio. You see them on the poster: Jake Gyllenhaal, Yahya, Abdul-Mateen, and Eiza Gonzalez. And this is Yahya Abdul-Mateen's story here. He plays a decorated veteran who needs money to cover his wife's medical bills. So he teams up with his adoptive brother, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, to steal $32 million from a Los Angeles bank. But when their getaway goes spectacularly wrong, the desperate thieves hijack an ambulance that's carrying a severely wounded cop and an EMT, played by Eiza Gonzalez. So the two siblings are caught in a high-speed chase, and they must figure out a way to outrun the law while keeping their hostages alive. So believe it or not, despite everything I've said about Michael Bay and his filmography up to this point in the review, there's some good things to say about Ambulance. And you know what? I'll applaud you. I'll applaud you. You made your best movie since The Island, which, considering the track record, is not a difficult task at all. My first praise for this movie actually is this whole premise. It reminded me a lot of 1994's Speed, which is one of my personal favorite action movies. I've always said that the key is simplicity, and this is probably one of Michael Bay's simplest attempts at a blockbuster, and give the devil credit where it's due, this succeeds for the most part. I think the second act all the way up to a very gripping emotional finale, which certainly caught me by surprise. It's a really effective finish to the film. But for the most part, this is a very intense, high-stakes thriller for sure. $32 million hang in the balance, and you also have this life of a cop who's named Zack in this film. And you know what? If you're in search of a name for a character and you're just stumped, might I throw out the name Zack? Because there's a few cool cats in my life with that name. As long as you spell it correctly with a K, then you know what? I'm good. But anyway, I was very surprised at how claustrophobic this movie feels. A lot of it takes place in the back of this ambulance, where this cop named Zack is laying on the stretcher dying here. And there is one scene involving a surgery where they have to extract a bullet out of him, and it is just gruesome. Like, my word, is this rated R. And you know what? That's something else I gotta applaud here, is some of this action. I think it's choreographed extremely well. I think it's super intense. But my biggest praise towards Ambulance has to go to these three main actors. Jake Gyllenhaal knows what kind of project he's in at this point, and he is just having a ball. And he gets to go a little bit unhinged, similar to what he did in Nightcrawler in some ways. I don't want to say this performance is as good as Nightcrawler, don't get my words twisted, but he is absolutely as excellent as he's ever been in this film, as is Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who plays his adoptive brother. You can feel the dynamic between those two shifting drastically throughout this film. They explore so much emotionally together, and I think they play off of each other wonderfully on screen. Yahya Abdul-Mateen, this is definitely his story. He is a star on the rise. I loved him in Candyman. I loved him in The Trial of the Chicago 7, and I loved him in Ambulance. He is easily the character you get behind the most. A close second to being Eiza Gonzalez as this EMT, who actually has a really fascinating arc. Don't get me wrong, there's some things about the screenplay that I'd love to talk about further into this review, but this is something that the screenplay got right, is that these characters all evolve into people who they weren't at the beginning. And Eiza Gonzalez's character here is the biggest culprit of that. She goes in and you see her saving lives. You see her save this little girl named Lindsay from a really heinous looking car accident. And then she looks at her partner and she's like, you know, it's just a job. I don't feel any emotional connection. And not to spoil anything, of course, but you kind of get the picture of where her character is going to go. And I thought this was presented really effectively. And it surprisingly does tug at your heartstrings. As I've mentioned previously, The finale to this film is super intense, and the ending to this film is one of the more gripping ones you may see out of Michael Bay's films. So now let's get to all the problems that I have with Ambulance, because believe it or not, even though I said that this is his best movie since The Island, he couldn't help himself, could he? It was about an hour and a half deep into the film, and I noticed that there wasn't any explosion in this film, without any fireworks, and I was like, kudos to you, Michael Bay. You did a movie without an explosion. But then boom, boom, bigger boom after that. And I know I should have expected it because this is kind of an action thriller from Michael Bay, but I'm sitting there like, you couldn't help yourself, could you? You have to make this claustrophobic thriller the biggest extravaganza you can imagine. Well, not to mention, this is a movie that very much feeds on Michael Bay's ego, for sure. And especially in the writing, it does make references to both The Rock and Bad Boys. And I was sitting there like, okay, I get what he's done in the past, but can you focus more on creating a good movie by itself, please? Thankfully, they don't do it the whole time. It's only through the first act, I would say, and then they stop doing that, but I just couldn't help but roll my eyes. I'm sorry, I just couldn't help it. And that's just me. You know, I hate when ego gets in the way of putting out good work, and that is way evident in those lines of dialogue. So I mentioned that the action was really solid in this film. I really wish I could have seen a lot more of it because this cinematography is so bad, people. Not to mention the editing to go along with it. Michael Bay does not like holding on actors for more than 10 seconds, it seems, in this film, because there are so many quick jump cuts, there are so many handheld shaky cam style scenes in there, and I was sitting there like, you kidding me right now? Like, they had to do it that way? Like, couldn't you just have all those big drone shots hovering over the ambulance and just, you could see everything perfectly? Actually, no, scratch that, because the drone shots, especially in the first act, oh my god, they made me seasick. And you know what, guys? Unless I'm on Star Tours at Disneyland, I don't get motion sickness that easily. But when you give me filmmaking like this, it happens. It happens. I had to look down so many times. And I wanted to look up because Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Abdul-Mateen are throwing their all into this film. And with the premise like this, I'm like, you could have had an instant classic action film. Speed showed you that this idea is perfect for a movie like this. But no, Michael Bay just couldn't help himself. He stepped on his toes one too many times, and I'm sitting here kind of annoyed now. All in all, I wouldn't say Ambulance is a horrible film like some of his past movies. I mean, you can still be entertained by this, I suppose. It's just not a movie that I would see myself watching again. If I'm being generous, I'm gonna give Ambulance a B-. And I can't go any higher than that. The only reason why it's getting that grade is mainly because of the work of the actors and because the premise is so cool. As annoying as some of those other parts were, I kept thinking to myself, god damn, these other parts are too good for me to ignore. But of course, this is all just my opinion. Let me know what you thought of Ambulance down in the comment section below. What is your favorite Michael Bay movie that's out there? It's probably gonna be The Rock if I had to guess. But as you guys know, I love discussing all brand new things, movies and entertainment, as good or terrible as they may be. If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and smash that subscribe button along with that notification bell right next to it. That way you guys can always stay in the loop. And just a heads up, guys, you can also smash that like button as hard as you possibly can, and you can help me get this content out there to more lovely viewers like you. And I've got loads of exciting content hitting this channel very, very soon. I will be seeing Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore and Father Stu both next week. So those are just a couple of examples of what you guys can look forward to from me in the near future. And guys, thank you all so very much again for supporting the channel. It really, really does mean the world. I have a blast doing these. With all that being said, back talk, commence.